AI, AI system data, and funding decision is influenced by audience and trends and yeah, and the rest. So it's important that creatives understand in the future, creatives who understand money control their careers. So it's best you understand this pattern and you know how to position yourself properly. Okay. So yeah, these are just simple examples of cultural cases during the pre-colonial Nigeria, where the king funded artists, storytellers, you know, and it's important you know that creative work then and still now depends on access to power and elites and network. And the lesson for you is that who you know still matters in this space, and network and gatekeepers still exist. So, technically, while you're still in school, while you're still trying to build a portfolio, I advise that you get your hands on ideas and projects, just build something beautiful for yourself from the scratch so you can have a very bulky portfolio. I mean, by the end of next year, you're going to have a very bulky portfolio. So, yeah. Funding sources for this culture and creative industry, your industry, comes from international cultural institutions, government funding, non-profit, cultural, corporate sponsorship, and partnerships. So where can you see open calls? What do we call what are open calls? Open calls are like public invitations for people to apply for opportunities, for students, for creatives like yourself. So technically, there are some organizations that are looking for people that can apply for certain things, and they do this open call to promote transparency. Majority of the time, you can find them on this social media platforms. I doubt on Snapchat, on TikTok. I never find any one of them there. Twitter, so yeah, sometimes Instagram, yes, Facebook, yes. WhatsApp community also good. LinkedIn, wonderful. Telegram, I'm not on Telegram, so I don't really know. But Google, make sure you can. Google has access to all these things as well. So yeah, let's move fast. Yes, yes, yes. These are logos that you need to start doing hard research on. These are the organizations, these are the spaces, these are the communities that are funding heavily in our industry. This is our culture and creative industry. You have the European Union, British Council, Erasmus Mundus. And this depends on really what you want. Is it after school you want to do an internship? Do you want to do a cultural exchange project? Do you want to do a master's? What exactly do you want to do? So get used to this logos because these are the organizations that support cultural and creative industry mostly. So yeah, I mean, majority of the time when you see any application online, it's always good for you to understand, am I eligible? Am I eligible in terms of space, in terms of profession, in terms of age range? And I mean, you're lucky now because you are in a stage where many of these opportunities are accessible to you. So this is a very ripe era for you to target these opportunities. I don't know if I still have much time. Let me see. Do I have much time? Yeah. Sorry? Sorry, how many more minutes do I have? Okay. Okay. So, yeah, like I said, Chevening scholarship in terms of eligibility, majority of these organizations already have on their websites eligibility criteria for you to go through. So it's best for you to keep looking through this opportunity, their platforms to find anything you are eligible for. And majority of the time, when you're submitting a, sorry, sorry, I thought, sorry, I couldn't hear you. Were you saying something? Okay. Oh, oh, okay. Okay, great. Okay, great. Um, so majority of the time they will always ask you for application materials. It's very important you know that there are core documents that you need to start putting together as an artist, as a creative. Right now, you need to understand that aside your talent, the most important thing. Okay. Okay. Aside your talent, the most important thing for you is are your core documents, supporting materials. These are your verification documents, your more additional documents, but we'll get into them. Yep, yep, yep. So, first things first, about documents that you need to be very serious about is your CV. Yes, this is a very interesting, this is one of the simplest templates you could follow. We need to know your work experience, education, professional summary. It's good you start building this thing now at this very young and very beautiful age you're in now before it's too late. Um, you need to focus on your CV. You need to focus on, it has to be clear and have relevant structure, strong result-based experience, and tailored towards professional presentation, tailored towards a professional presentation. So while you're also in school, you also need to start understanding packaging. You also need to start knowing how to sell yourself and your art and your work. Do you understand? And majority of the time, you might not be able to sell them verbally, but you might be able to sell them on paper. So that is why I keep saying paperwork is important. Additionally, there, aside your CV, there are also motivation letters, there are documents like the motivation letter that you need to submit. But this is where I'll stop at the moment. If you have any questions, please let me know. Yeah.
Hey, thank you. This is beautiful. You know, you should give a round of applause. You know, it's amazing stuff. The things you talked about are the things that changed my life. You know, so it's one thing to have talent, to have capacity, but it's also one thing to get out there, you know, where it matters. You need funding. For us to do this program, we needed funding, you know, and you can't just pull money out of your pocket and say, oh, I want to run this. I want to make amateurs. I need funding. I worked in France last year. I needed funding and been to quite a number of studios around the world. I needed funding so that somebody always has to pay all the bills. You know, so it's funding, 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 a chain of funding that doesn't end. It's not begging. It's the stuff that you do that makes you qualify for it. But then you have to put your work out there. You have to, you know, you always have to put data together, the things that you can do. So what you said, ma'am, is absolutely spot on. I would appreciate if you could share the PowerPoint file. Are you guys interested in it? Yes. The PowerPoint file with us so that we can share with the students. It would be a huge resource so that they can reference, um, you know, some of the places they can reach out to. I remember that a couple of years ago, I was just checking some motion opportunities just on Google, so just straightforward, and I saw a couple of opportunities, and within a couple of months, you know, I was already like in the country where you know that opportunity was. It was just clicking a link, making an application, and the next thing they're like, "Congratulations, Esther! You know you're qualified to come for this training." And each training, every extra invitation you get validates you for another one. You know, because what essentially, you know, one thing about Nigerians is that we always need validation. You know, because nobody gets just not show up and then they just trust you inside there as a Nigerian. Nobody people don't do that. You know, there's always that tendency for them to look like, I hope this person is not like scam or fraud, you know, and all of that. So you need all the validation you can get. You need things that precede you, you know, your portfolio and all of that. So I don't know if you still have something to say um, for the to back up what I just said or
Yes.
asking regarding PowerPoint
Yes.
here. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I will share the PowerPoint material. But one final thing, One final
Just say thank
thing.
you.
Yeah, sorry. One final thing one final thing before I leave. There's this part of the slide that you guys need to understand, that will always be, would give you headache when you start making applications. These are familiar energies that, well, we call them, they're like village people that would always come around. But whether or not, you have to keep trying, no matter how many times you get rejection letters, you have to keep trying. And the most important thing for you to know is that you need a proper plan. You need a proper plan. Funding is also important, yes, but you need to properly strategize. You need to properly look into your community, whatever challenges they are facing there, and how you can bring a solution to it with your talent. So yes, I will share the material with you. And yes, all right. This is it. You could also share my email if anybody wants to reach out to speak to me. I'm very well accessible. Yeah. So all right. Have a beautiful day ahead. Okay. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
All
Thank
right.
you
Bye
so
bye.
much. You've been amazing. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
Yeah.
for this session. It's beautiful to have heard what you said. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So we're going back to what we're doing, which was the amateurs. So but you need to keep this in mind, and you need to ensure that there's a pathway for us to be able to get that PowerPoint across, because you'll find it very useful. I can assure you, especially if you want this to get serious very fast. You don't have to wait till you finish, from school before you make those applications. You find them very they're life changers. I've applied for things that have been crazy, like, I've not seen any black or anybody maybe, anybody that looks like me ever get. And then I apply for it, then I'm the first person that ever get, so it happened to me a couple of times, so, and those things when you hit another person, you're like, I'm a fellow of this, like the lie. Like, yeah, it's just an application. Those things, it's not like Nigeria where it's who knows who, who do you know? You understand? It's you being able to put together a detailed application, and everything is properly done, and you're good. But like the emotions you put there, yes, they are real. There's the fear of rejection. The fear that you say, sorry, I would I regret to tell you that was announced that there were too many people that applied. You understand? And your application was good, but because there's so many applications, we couldn't pick yours. Oh yes, I think one of the things we need to get used to is those things. I don't think we should be afraid of it. If they reject, it's fine. Sometimes I look at the proportion and I'm like, you have to get like 50 rejections for one acceptance, 15 to 20 sometimes if you apply a lot, but that one acceptance is enough. One in every, if you do one in every 15, that's huge, So, but then there's procrastination, I'll do it later, and all that, but you just have to do what you're going to do, you know. Don't forget in Nigeria, irrespective, we are plenty. You understand? We are plenty. If there's anything that is plenty in Nigeria, it's people. You understand? So in advance, they always say it. Everybody, all the people around you are in a way competitors. Maybe that's why we don't like each other too much. Because that we're many. So the resources or the opportunities that exist, you really have to stand out. So you have to start your homework quickly. Start putting things together. Whatever decision you're going to make, whether you're doing this one question or you're not, you have to make decisions on time. So that you can start working towards it. Take the application. The beautiful thing now is that the world is like a global village, like really a global village. The borders are not real anymore. So whatever you want to be across the world, you can't be. It's not, Nigeria is not the whole world. Of course, you guys know that. So the opinion of Nigeria or Nigerians, don't count what you can become. It's really up to you. So let's go ahead and start. Um, so we have to rearrange if we haven't arranged. Let's go ahead, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. Esther, So we came back to practicals um, when we went to Yabate last week. We had 2 days to do a symposium on one workshop on the two. On here, we used to be doing the two, both symposium and workshop. So we need to make use of the time. So let's go back to work quickly, please. We have no time. Please time to create magic. Time to use your magic fingers. Time to bring the amateur to life. It's time to make it walk. Time to make it fly. Whatever you can imagine. The only thing that can stop you is your imagination. Let's get back to what we need, everyone. Want to see your project at the end of the workshop. I have 5 groups. Is there any group without an instructor? Quickly, let's get back to action. Let's can you hear your instructors? The music is not stopping.
Yeah, don't that to the former point. So it is. The DJ will call and say, the DJ bring that DJ plus increased. I don't know how what you
Hey guys, animators as we go in. Great animators. Based on at the end of the workshop, you're going to present your projects. And the best group will be going home with we're interested in the reward. How's the reward at the end of the show? People are creating zero that way. And create anything you can imagine. Needs to go. Lovely. It's not an immediate size on there. That is already creating progress. What's that? that a boy or a son. I'll find out at the end of the program. Okay. Some are achieving their aim through noise, and some are quietly achieving their goals. If we, those guys are having fun over there. Stop animation is you will think you are watching match. Who just scored? Can you imagine? AMBCA, they started giving themselves nominations already. I want to see that project. AMBCA, go. Oscar Niabi. You're making others look as if they are not working. Guys, start shouting also there. Do not allow them to intimidate you. Let me see what you mean. Where's the video? This is what you guys are shouting about. They'll say these guys, and then that's beautiful. That's cool. You want to see, you want to copy your style. Show them, show them, show them. Yeah, you can copy, you can copy. Show them now, let them copy. I'm going to see your project. Some people are done with their projects. You need to have a name according to the team.
Okay, sir. No, that's not possible now. I'm not finished now. Not finished. Are you guys done already? How many frames? You come back. Okay, everybody.
So there are different roles in stop motion animation. Some are specialized in creating puppets, fabricating puppets, designing the sets. Some are story making, storytelling, writing, and we also have those that are cinematographers, just like those who make these with the cameras. In a way, they are selecting their parts, their own. Just go ahead, create the puppets, create the sense, get the storyline. When it's time to shoot, call on them. That's your role in the professional thing. When it's time to shoot, you call them. You call this thing. Andrew, what's your name?
David, what's your team name? Team Gary.
Gary what?
Gary.
As in Gary, like cassava flakes. These guys are so creative. Even their name is a creative name. Gary. What team is it? Cannot. Right. What's your team name? Team one. Let me give you. They said they are Gary. Team what? Temo. Funny names today. This is what's your team name? Guys are about to get the team. Team. Wow. You. Lovely. Menzo's team are divided into two. Man, what's your team name? This is Team Rice. She's Rice. Okay. So what's your team name? Power. You guys should do another one. DJ Government. Don't go wizard DJ. One more than as well. And you have seen Gary. We're looking at 1 minute of Gary. This secret animators in the house. What's your name? You memorizing the other thing. What's your name? You repeating. What did they collect from you? So this is your thing. 30 minutes more. 10. So we have 10 more minutes to round up. 10 more minutes to go. We'll be talking to one of our international guests. In 10 minutes.
It's like everybody directed. I need this like properly directed. I'm deaf.
Can you see here?
So when you see, I need to see. I need like I want to like. Right. The family is here. Is here. Hey,
Hi.
Rachel.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Yay. Wow, it's so good to have you. Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you for making our time.
Yeah,
Okay,
no
all right.
worries. Is it
Okay.
working? You can hear me? Everything's good?
Very loud and
Yes,
clear.
we can hear you loud and clear.
Good. Hello.
Okay. So, Rachel, we'll be starting in a couple of minutes. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so we're so excited to see you. Thank you for waking up so early. Yeah, it's 6:35 with you, is it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's very early in the morning. So she was waking up very early in the morning, and Rachel Lambdin, we're going to read your citation, but I wanted to tell the participants here, because we have quite a number of participants in the room, that are using the stop motion amateurs for the very first time in their lives, I guess. Rachel Lambdin is, what I consider to be one of world, you know, most successful animators. She's done a whole lot. She has a huge body of work
Hi, everybody.
in animation, and yeah, she's got all the experience that we could imagine, in terms of some of the things that we're trying to look out for or understand better about the amateurs. That would probably take us maybe the next 3 4 years to be able to understand. And she'll just tell us, within the next hour. So that's crazy stuff. That she's going to start telling us about animation principles, what we should be thinking about when we animate and stuff like that. So, guys, you need to round up with the amateurs so that we can pay like 100% attention. They're making animation sequences for the first time today, too. So,
Oh, wow.
Rachel, welcome to Pan Atlantic University. And we're so glad that you're here. Excited about the possibilities going forward, for animation in this part of the world. Us being able to tell our stories with stop motion animation. That's huge. That's huge stuff. Considering that before now we have not had so much representation in stop motion. Stop motion is a beautiful form of expression in film. And yeah, we're looking forward to being able to build proper foundations, for very good, yeah, very impressive animation sequences. And then of course, we can talk about making film like that going forward. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, about time now. Okay, I think we still have 5 minutes. Uh, okay, we have 3 minutes. So okay, so okay, let's have the citation. Let's have the citation for Rachel Lambdin. Guys, okay, let's have. Okay, all right. No, no, give them. They still have 5 minutes to round up. But Rachel is already here, so we'll just have. Um, yeah. Okay, so
Okay,
let's have citation.
so I
Yes.
would like us to please pay attention, please, everyone. Before we go ahead, I would like us to please celebrate and welcome Rachel Landini. Please, a round of applause for her, please.
Hey, everybody.
Rachel Landin is an accomplished stop motion animator and animation director known for her expressive character animation and leadership in global animation industry. One house, please. One house, please. Everyone, one house, please. She has worked on major productions, including Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio, Kubo and the Two Strings,
Yeah,
Missing Link,
you can imagine that.
and Paranorman.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? That's huge.
With decades of experience in animating complex performances frame by frame, she is widely respected for her craft mentorship and role in advancing opportunities for women in animation while inspiring the next generation of stop motion artists worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, for the multiple award-winning animator and director, Rachel Lavelle.
Hi, everybody.
Everybody,
Hi.
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Rachel. We're excited, beyond excited, to have you here. I have you seen the people in the room? Because we turned the camera, so you can see. Okay, so yeah, so we're having a conversation about animation, and we have a couple of questions that we would like you to yeah, to put some light on it. And so we wanted to first of all ask you because many times when folks have achieved quite a bit, we tend to have like we have this extraordinary, like they're not normal people,
Yeah.
kind of impression. And so I would like you to tell us a little bit about yourself and then why stop motion? How did you get there? Stop motion isn't something that's, like the natural go-to job you would want to do, like when you're maybe in school. So why stop motion? Tell us a bit. How did you get there?
That's a good question. First of all, I just want to say hi, everybody, and thanks for having me. It's really exciting. Nice to meet you. Um, it's also an honor to have someone recognize that you've been working hard. So that's great. But also humble. It's an opportunity anybody could try to strive for. In that stop motion's a funny thing. I don't know one person who really knew they wanted to be a stop motion animator from the beginning. Everybody's kind of fallen into it. I have some friends who used to be a professional chef, or he was another stunt person who ended up being an animator. Like all the people a lot of the people that I know who become animators were not stop motion animators before. And so they either come from some life experience and then found stop motion, or some people studied, excuse me, animation, and then they decided, ooh, stop motion is kind of cool. And so for me, I actually wanted to get into kind of theater and acting, and that's the path that I was into. I really liked puppets and things, performing and bringing things to life. That was my drive. And so when I was little, I started to have interest in that. And then I went to university for acting and theater directing. And so that's what I thought I was going to do. And so I left school thinking like, all right, I'm going to make it in theater. This is the thing I'm going to do. My teachers say it's really hard and I probably won't, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I started to do some theater, and then still needed a job, right? I needed something that actually paid the bills. So I ended up, luckily, getting a job in a stop motion animation studio in Toronto, because I'm actually from Canada. And so I started in this stop motion studio called Cup of Coffee. And so they were doing a TV show for Disney called JoJo's Circus. And when I started there, they were looking for like a production assistant. And so I ended up becoming an assistant to the producer and the production manager. So when I got there, I was doing things like handing out the X sheets. I was talking to different departments and gathering designs for the clients and things like that. But while I was there, I was walking around the studio, and I'm wondering if anybody there has been to a stop motion studio before. Have you seen it in real life?
Okay, has anyone walked into a stop motion studio? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, you have? No, none. Okay. We don't have
All
a lot of
right.
stop motion studios around here.
Yeah.
But
So
we do have one.
yeah. Okay. So it's kind of fun, right? Like kind of looks like potentially like a little playground, like a Santa's workshop sometimes. It can have like, so I'm walking around and I'm a creative person, but I don't have a creative job. And I was walking around and every day and I was like, oh, wow, that's a cool department. Oh, that's really neat what they're doing. And so each department was really interesting. So there was people building sets and props and then people building puppets and VFX and excuse me, all of those things were happening. And then I loved it all. But then when I was going to see the animators, I was like, oh, this feels really interesting. It's a lot like theater, right? So you've got these kind of black curtains and a stage, and you've got these little actors, and you can animate them, and they won't talk back or anything. And so it was like really inspiring. And so I was really enamored with that. And then and at the time, I didn't have any animation training at all. And I remember my bosses saying to me, um, well, they allowed me to start to train. So after work, I would go up after my job was done. So I worked at like 9 to 6, and then I would go up after work, and some of the directors would let me have a puppet and a stage, and I would just practice. And I would learn something new. Okay, learning about arcs. Okay. And I would start to practice, and I made JoJo, start to animate. And so I was doing that pretty much every night after work. I would go up and do that. And then I would get feedback. The director would see my work and say, oh, this is good. How about you try this? And so I did that for a while. I did that for months. And then um, finally, I remember there was a job opening because an animator was leaving. And I remember my production manager came up to me and said, Rochelle, just so you know, there's a job opening and you're not going to get it. She said, other people went to school for animation and they're in line ahead of you. So, and that was that, right? And I was disappointed. I was like, okay, like that's a little disheartening, right? But my director, who was really supportive of my work, he said, hey, just keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about it. Just keep doing what you're doing. And so he ended up uh, having a chat with like the production manager and producer and kind of just standing up for me saying, hey, you know what? She's here every night. She has a body of work. This is where she's at. And I ended up getting the job. So that's that. I love that story for me because I always remember you get told no or obstacles happen for you. And I find if I were to listen to all those obstacles, I would not be here today. So it's an example for me to always go back and go, oh, someone said no. And you're like, but I still want to do it. So how do I figure it out? So yeah.
Wow, it's interesting that you have come from, a point where you had to practice,
Hmm.
and then and having to have such massive portfolio of work. It tells you about full seconds. When you're able to move on the point where it wasn't all there, and then you know, you find yourself in places that you probably never imagined,
Yeah.
yeah, and because when you mention the films that you have done, these are some of the biggest films, in animation, stop motion animation that I've ever been, like, so yeah, it's huge. It's very legendary stuff, and yeah, we're glad, to hear that. I would like, one of the interesting things that we have here, for many years we animate, well, in our studio, we animated with aluminium wire. Yeah. So, and of course, it was good that we could because we actually started out with dolls at first. So it was really cool that we're using aluminium wire because the puppets were made. We made them ourselves. But we also discovered a problem quickly that the aluminium wire had broke quickly. And so the work we have done in trying to make the puppets quickly failed, and so we really couldn't go beyond some really short shots.
Right.
And yeah, and we struggled a lot to try and ensure that the puppets remained the way they were, like in the beginning. And so we have taken time out to be able to make our own armatures. So right now we have, full ball and socket armature kits,
Wow.
that we use in the studio. Yeah, we are extremely proud of it, because now it sort of raises the bar for us. So this we launched our amateur last year, and over the course of the last couple of months, we have gotten used to animating with it and all of that. So today we want to talk a bit about and we today at the workshop here we are working on work cycles with the amateur. And so I would like to ask, when you are coming up with a work cycle in stop motion animation, most of your puppets would have probably have amateurs inside them. Um, what's your process like? What's first of all your thought process? How what you think about references, all that stuff. What's your thought process like? How do you get to execute that process of creating a work cycle? So we're hearing it from like end of the line. How do you get to do the work cycle?
Right. Well, first of all, congratulations on that armature.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I've worked with both. I've worked with wire, and sometimes wire is nice because you just put it there and you're like, okay, it's easy to fix, like, all of these things, it costs less. But yes, it can break. It has a lifespan for sure. It's good. You're like, oh, I can only do this a couple more times. And so, in terms of the walk cycle, how I think about it now, um, I think, I mean, now I look for kind of character. And so I'll think about what kind of timing, how the character holds their weight, um, what's the time, like the speed, right? So I start to look, so after you kind of get that first initial kind of walk cycle where, you've got a couple steps, and how does this person carry themselves? And so if you go to kind of like a neutral, like walk, um, is the weight landing where it needs to? There's often that little like kick out before that leg lands. So you see that knee kind of bending forward, and then there's a little bit of like a kick out with the knee. And sometimes um, the foot, this is something that my animation supervisor is always bringing up, and which I don't always think about, but I'm trying to, is that foot sometimes at the front kind of kicks out and around, right? At the toe out and around before it finds its spot, and its heel lands, and then the foot takes the weight. Um, so once you get kind of a basic walk cycle, these are the extra things that you can think about as to what gives that person character, right? Like, so um, are they, is you've got your kind of neutral, and then you're like, okay, well, how do I add some performance into that? What is the person, now that you know who the person is, are they, what is their mood? Are they scared of something? Like all of these other questions you can kind of ask, like what's the scenario that would make you make choices and affect the walk? Um, the walk cycle in general, if you're just trying to practice just a walk cycle, I wouldn't overcomplicate it with those kinds of things. I would just work on getting a good, like good weight, just making it feel like you can get into a pattern. How we do it when we have like interns is we have we usually shoot some lavs, so live action video reference. So we'll shoot some reference, and then we have something that we can go off of and something that we're working towards. We often shoot a 3/4 walk, and then we do like sometimes we put a rig on them and we'll just have them walk in spot just to kind of learn the strides as well. And then we do one where they walk across screen. So you can kind of so you're getting both. You're learning first of all how to just kind of work on the body. And then the other one would be to traverse across, because that's ultimately what a walk is, right? You want to make sure that you're integrating with the ground and using the right amount of space that looks right in order to cross the screen. But yeah, reference can help you. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. What's the 3/4?
I'm sorry?
You said the 3/4. You should film the 3/4.
Oh, 3/4, sorry.
Cycle.
Yeah, so a 3/4 is so instead of straight on camera, I'm like this to camera.
Okay.
So I'm not profile. I'll just be like this.
Okay, I get that. I get.
And so
Okay.
and then so I'd be 3/4, and then some of those walk cycles can be kind of tricky, but you get to see a little bit more of the body. So it's not clearly profile and it's not straight on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I get that. Okay, you guys know what the 3/4 is? Yes. Yeah. Okay, I wanted to be sure you guys know. Okay. So I would also like you to talk about how animation principles apply to the work cycle. Today I've seen a bit of ease in, ease out. I've seen a bit of anticipation. You guys know what anticipation is, isn't it? Yeah. So so I would like you to talk particularly about timing and spacing. As well. But just animation principles in reference to the work cycle. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so timing and spacing for the walk cycle. I mean, what's interesting is it's really tough to go from a walk cycle that, like if you're anticipating a walk cycle and you're going from stop, like a stop position, and you start, just so you know, we still find it hard. So there's a lot in that. It's easier to just have it start and you're just consistently like walking, right? But in an anticipation of it, you might be there and you're gonna recoil and get ready and then start. I think the best thing to do would be to take a reference of yourself and to watch it, because you are going to learn. I always think the reference is really important because have you guys ever, I'm not a huge life drawer or anything, but I have gone to life drawing like classes, and what you think in your brain, you think it's this, you think your arm moves like this, and then you take a reference and you realize, oh no, my arm did this anticipation and then it did this, and so now I have, you have more information. My mom was a wildlife artist, so she always used to have paintings of, like, if it was an owl, she'd have like owl pictures all over. So that reference can be an inspiration and give you a lot of information. So to kind of go off of, you do not have to copy it, but it's a really important tool you can use that can really escalate your animation, because if you're doing a naturalistic style, it gives you a lot of information there. So that, if you're thinking anticipation, I think you're going to get a lot from a reference movie to kind of plan it and see what your body actually does versus what your mind thinks you do. And then with timing and spacing in a walk, yeah, it's really interesting to watch somebody walk in real life. Like I said, like if you just you know, spend time kind of people watching, and people it's pretty consistent usually. Like their feet and legs and arms are doing different things, but they don't like pulse when they walk across the road. They kind of just have a consistent speed, right? And um, so once you kind of figure out that stride of the character, so the stride is the extreme of the step,
Yeah.
then you can figure out like how many steps you're trying to go across, and each character can have different uh I don't want to give you an exact frame count or anything, but it depends on how fast that character is walking. Um, could be like from 16 frames to like 32 if it's a really slow one, right? Or they have a long stride. But that's on one. Sorry, I don't want to confuse you. Um, that would be on ones, but you're not shooting on ones, right? You'd be shooting on twos.
No, we shoot on ones.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
24 frames per second. Yes, we do.
That, oh, it's so hard. No.
We do. Yeah. There will be shots that we consider on tools, but most of the
Yeah.
time we discover
Okay.
that we only get really smooth animation when we shoot
Yeah.
on ones. It looks good,
Yeah.
when we
Okay.
shoot on ones.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, yeah, well, you guys are really challenging yourselves. Um, so that's fantastic. Be patient with yourself. That one's tricky. So how we work, like how I'll work on a feature is I'll get directed, and then I'll shoot a reference, and then we'll shoot a block. So the block will be on like, well, you can look at it in a couple ways, but for my advice for you guys would be to do it with keyframes. So you want to look for the key positions, right? And then, so I don't want to give you, don't even say to shoot it on fours or shoot it on tens, shoot it per key pose. And what you want to do is get the information that you need from that for timing and for positions that you want to work towards. And then you go to rehearsal. And your
Then
rehearsal,
you do what? Okay, we
pardon?
have go. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, then we rehearse.
Yeah.
And so the rehearse is on twos. So that's on doubles. And then that is when you're kind of figuring everything else out. You don't refine it, but you're figuring out all the timing, you're figuring out all the weight, you're kind of blending it together. And therefore, you have a plan. So when you shoot on ones, you can reference your twos and just think, okay, is my timing right? Am I because on ones is so, if you're like working in stone or something, you have to like really just chip away a little bit. It's hard to know where you're going, right? Like, so where, and am I in the right spot? Am I choosing the right increment? So the rehearsal, if you already have that done and you're doing your final on ones, your rehearsal, you can overlay it and say, okay, no, oh, I'm a little bit too fast or I'm a little too slow, things like that. That can really, really help. I'm not sure if you use that process, but that's the way we work because I think that creates a kind of infrastructure for you for a plan in order to move forward. Yeah, because it's tricky to jump right into ones, as you all know.
Yeah, I'm hearing this detailed explanation for the first time this way, and it's
Okay.
it's amazing because you break it down, from the point where you get the references, and then you do the observation, So she's explaining some very critical things that could help you do amazing stop motion animation. So and these things are very practical, from figuring out what your reference is in terms of what you want the character to do, and then of course you have to observe, and then there's the key poses, So now there's something called blocking, creating the blocking. So it's just like maybe a model wants to take pictures, and then you have like key poses that the model has to take. Exactly. So you have key poses, and then so you have the blocking. So for example, if someone was going to pick up the camera, you figure out what exactly are the key poses that gets you to the camera, and then so the blockings are establishing them before you start animating. So it won't be just what your mind is thinking is the animated point, but actually you can see it in real life. And the beautiful part she had is the rehearsal part. Just like practice makes perfect, rehearsals have that ability to help you perfect the quality of your animation. And honestly, these things are critical because if you get your animation right, it makes your sequence awesome, like off the go and all of that. So the rehearsals on tools, that's huge because it helps you know that okay, by the time you have the film, like say in 12 frames per second, which is on tools, you guys know what frames per second is, isn't it? So now, so standard quality stop motion animation films are shot on 24 frames per second. You understand? That's when you really get smooth animation. But you can shoot in 12 frames per second. So that's on tools. That means every 2 frames, you get the drift. So you're kind of referencing 24, but then it's now every 2 frames. So it's essentially 12 frames per second. So it's a bit jacky, it has the jacks, but it helps you get exactly what your spacing will be. Have you talked about timing and spacing today? You have talked about timing and spacing. So timing, is like duration, but spacing is what you have in between the points, the various points. You get that? So knowing, this is very critical because I saw guys animating there, and I saw that you guys, were trying to figure out where exactly the next position would be, isn't it? You understand? And you're trying to use that to determine speed, or whatever kind of movement you're trying to get. So your spacing is what helps you determine where exactly. And don't get me wrong here. Your spacing doesn't always have to be like one, then equal spacing next, equal spacing next, equal spacing. It's not that. You don't get smooth animation that way. You understand? Sometimes it's decreasing, sometimes it's increasing. Sorry, Rachel, I was trying to explain what you
Mm-hmm.
said, in reference to what we're doing here. So
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
it's it comes across very quickly, So yeah, and so it's important that how not just how to make the character move, but how to make it move in a beautiful way. I don't know if you understand, because it's in the beautiful way that you make it animate that makes it stand out, from any kind of animation that you get to see, all the time. And so, Rachel, I want to also ask, still with uh, amateur, I would like to ask, in terms of joints, one of the interesting things that the amateur has made us realize is that, unlike aluminium, where, it's one tension, like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
everything is just one kind of tensioning. The amateur, you can adjust the joints to be more tense, that's stronger, and then or like more rigid, or more free flowing, like that. And it's something that we're trying to understand, where the perfect, how do you decide, what's tensioning, because I see that animators have different preferences, when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to the tensioning of the joint. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, of course. So what you're asking is just how to decide how to tension it, right? For a stop motion, or sorry, for an armature, ball and socket
Yeah,
armature. Yeah.
yeah,
So, yeah, that's a great question. So what we generally do is you want the core to be the strongest, and so
Okay.
then you work your way out. So
Oh,
you want
wow.
to be able to have that kind of pelvis and core that has to hold the body. So when you go in to move that, that's got to be really intentional. Whereas you don't want to move let's say as you get further out, like the elbow is looser, then the shoulder, and the wrist is even looser than that, right? So you want to be able to kind of
Okay.
gently move. Let's say you want to move just the hand. You want to be able to do that. You don't want to have to move the whole, right? If this is tight, now you're starting to do weird things to the puppet. You want to be able to isolate it. So you're going to start your movement at the core. So even when you're walking or you're doing anything, if you're doing walk cycles, you want to start with those hips and that upper and the torso. So you move that to where you want to be. You're happy with that. You're happy with the spacing and the legs and everything. Then you animate like the extremities. Right now, you can kind of finesse this stuff. I know it's so tempting to go in and just move that hand or the head because that's what you want to do. That's the fun stuff. But you got to do the other stuff first, and that's your core. It's just so think about when you're tensioning, you want that core to be stronger. So that not so strong. I kind of like my puppets lighter tensioned because I like to do little nuances. So some people like them tight, loose. There's no right or wrong, just what works for you. So you have to be able to move them to where you want. And then yeah, just think of it like a spreading out. So if I go then to move my arm, I don't want it to move my chest, right? Like I've already established where I want that. So now I want to move the shoulder, and now I want to move the elbow, now I want to move the hand, and now the fingers, or the same with the neck. The lower neck is a little bit tighter than the upper neck. That should be a little bit lighter. If that's not established, then you get into these weird things and then you can't fix it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I
Okay.
would think of it like that.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to add to that because I also saw that the students here were trying to pose the amateur to some references, and I
Hmm.
saw a couple of people sort of like struggle with, posing the amateur. So I know that is like way back kind of question, but then yeah, you know, so when posing, are there any rules that helps in terms of what parts of the body do you pose first?
Hmm.
For example, if you have to pose maybe puppet that's about to take a punch, and the puppet is currently in the grounded pose,
Hmm.
just grounded, and then you want to make him appear that he's taking the punch,
Hmm.
not giving the punch now, it's taking
Hmm.
it,
Hmm.
and so what the process of the first pose, like, do you pose from the hip? Do you pose from the hands? Something like that. Can you take us through that?
Okay. So you're saying if a puppet is taking a punch, where would I
Thinking,
start?
yes, yeah, receiving a punch.
Okay.
Okay.
Um, well, I worked on Celebrity Deathmatch for a little bit. Has anybody seen that show, that TV show?
Okay. Okay.
Um, so that TV show is, if you look it up, it's silly. It's a silly show, but it was all these celebrities that were just kind of like just having matches to the death, essentially, right? So I have experienced that. It was really, really fun though, because you could cut your puppets up and like you would go to like punch each other. They would fly across the screen, and you're covered in like fake blood and stuff. It was really fun. It was after I worked on that kids show, so it was a really fun change. Um, anyway, so I mean, it would if a puppet was taking a punch, I would. I mean, if I'm animating the other puppet and you're having that arm come in, poof, right? And then you need to show that impact. So wherever that is hitting, that's where you would probably focus on, right? Yeah, exactly. So if it was the face, like would you decide how it's getting hit? Is it getting hit like this? And then it's like with the body, like you want to go from the impact, and that would be the impetus of like pushing that body. So is it like curve in? But you after that first beat of contact, that's the tricky part is deciding how many frames it is. So sometimes it's like one, or sometimes it's like here and the next one's contact, and then maybe there's another one, and then you start to see it kind of go away, right? Is you want to make sure that there's enough of a reaction that you sell it in that the object being hit, so it doesn't look like it just went like ping, right? So it has to have some like, yeah, some recoil or weight. That's when weight comes in all over again. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you now get couples done? Do you start from the hips?
Sorry, say that
Where do you
again.
start from?
Where do I
How do you get
start?
that pose? Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you work that pose? Do you start from the hips? Do you start from
Oh,
the feet?
not always.
Yeah.
Not always with that. Like with if you have an object that's not if you have because that's almost a separate obstacle, right? So if it was a body, say the person giving the punch, maybe you'd think like that. You think, okay, well, this is a physical thing that this person can control. So what do the muscles do in order to do that? So they would behave normal like a human. It may wind up. And so yeah, it would be in the hips, you'd be, getting that weight and the impact. But if it's a punch, I feel like that's an obstacle that's not a normal behavior for the human body. So it would be like an obstacle that would come out of nowhere. So you'd probably just start wherever the impact is. And so like, if it's in the head, you could kind of start and lead it from wherever the impact is, and then have the rest react to it. So it wouldn't necessarily be the hip.
Wow.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, it does. It makes a lot of sense. I didn't think of that, but then yeah, it makes a lot of sense because the other part of the body just reacts, or responds to the part that receives the punch. Yeah, that makes sense. Doesn't it make sense? That when somebody gets hit, it's not the normal rule of maybe animating from the hip or anywhere else. It's the animations from that place that gets hit. So for example, maybe if somebody's hit by maybe a car or something, so the part that first makes contact, is the part just going, like that, and then everywhere else sort of, it sort of, what I mean, responds to that. So you would probably not be animating the feet first. You want to animate like the back, taking everything, and then the foot. Then the rest of the body responds to that. Wow, that's beautiful. Do you guys have any questions? Questions? Yeah, awesome. There are questions. All right, so give him the microphone. Okay, can you come forward so she gets you? You know, we need all the visibility we can get.
Okay.
All right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Hello.
Hi.
So I like to think of stop motion animation to have this imperfect charm to it, and it's something that
Mhm.
adds to the art form. But it feels like nowadays we've been spoiled with too good of an animation, and everyone just suddenly wants it to be super smooth. So how can we balance that imperfection with modern expectations for smoothness?
Could you repeat that last part of your question? Sorry. Hi, and thank you for your question, by the way. Will you repeat, yeah, just that last
How,
part?
yeah. How can we balance modern expectations? Sorry, how can we balance imperfection of stop motion with the modern expectations for smoothness?
That is such a good question. Um, yeah, it's such an interesting. medium, because often, like, we'll work really hard to get it smooth, and then often one of the criticisms is it's too smooth, and we're like, it looks like CG. And so it's like, oh man, is it worth the effort, right? Because you're just like, oh, it's tough to get it that smooth. But it is a really good question, because it's something that comes up a lot. And I think what the most important thing with stop motion, and the most important thing is not always how, like, you want to achieve some fluidity, I think. I think that um, that helps you to express the performance. I don't think it has to be perfect. I think some of that charm, some of that, the texture and the edges and a little bit of chatter, that is kind of it's an accepted norm. And you're right, it does have a charm. It does help, especially with today in the AI potential, right? It's like we are all um, we have an opportunity to really appreciate this hand done, like, medium. And so I think there still is a charm in that on twos. Like, Pinocchio was mostly shot on twos. I didn't actually work in Pinocchio. I worked on like 7 other films, but I have a lot of friends and who are on that one. So twos and some ones. But there's still there's a charm in that. When you can see the performance and you can feel the characters, I think that is the most important thing that you can achieve. And at Leica, where we do like really, really finessed work, the objective is to create something that makes you feel, right? So it's like, it's more important to get a character or to feel empathy for that, person on screen or the creature on screen. Um, so I would put more thought into and energy into creating life from something, creating a good performance out of something, rather than trying to strive for the perfection of it. I think if I can help shift that just slightly. So, because it's so interesting to watch something um, that has essence, it has beauty, it makes you want to keep your eyes on it, right? Even if it's just a little creature, like the suspension of disbelief um, can happen even if a film has some like chatter in it, right? You can still fall in love with a little felt like eyeball that's like moving across the screen if it has a story to tell. So I feel like that might be the answer. Um, if we continue to try to tell good stories with the medium, I feel like that's where that heart will come from. I wouldn't be afraid to have it just strive for just perfection. I would still strive for good
Okay, can you
animation.
check the speaker?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, standing on quiet. All right. Okay. Can you hear me, Rachel? You can hear me?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
hear
No,
you.
because I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't
I
hear me?
wonder why.
Oh,
Okay. No, no. This just went off.
is that working now?
Okay. Yeah, it is. I can
Okay.
hear.
I'm sorry.
You can hear. Yes. Okay,
Should I
so
be
that must
quiet?
have something to do with the speaker. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
It's, it's connected. All right. Okay.
Can
Okay.
you hear can you hear me
Go
now?
ahead, like whisper kind of situation.
Here. Oh, can you hear me now?
Okay. Not yet. I can't hear you yet. Okay.
Can you hear me now? Oh.
No, I can't hear you.
Oh.
Okay,
Okay.
just a moment. I think they're trying to resolve this now. What exactly is happening? Have you tried pulling it out to see? Okay. Hello, can you say something? Um, Rachel, can you say something? Sorry.
Oh, hello, hello,
Okay.
hello. Can you
Yes,
hear
I
me?
can hear that in the distance.
Oh, good.
I
Is that better?
can hear like far away.
Good.
Okay.
Did you
Um,
hear my answer then, or?
maybe I can hear her from the laptop. Let me just, if you can bring it close. Not going to be a problem. Because I need to hear her. We're rounding up actually, but I just would like to hear. Um, okay.
Hi,
Yeah.
Brian.
Hello, I'm gonna
Hi,
leave. I'm gonna
Brian.
leave again.
Yes, I can hear you now, but not very well.
See
Okay.
ya. Good luck.
Bye,
All
Brian.
right. Okay. Oh yeah. Oh man. Can you bring the laptop close so that I can? Yeah. All right. So, okay. 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 So Rachel.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you from here.
No,
Okay.
you can't hear me? No.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good. Great.
Okay. So you were saying, just go ahead.
Right. Did you hear? I'm not sure how much you heard of that answer, but I was basically saying, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Basically saying, first of all, that was such a great question. And it's something that we are always talking about with this medium. If you have love for this medium, I would go for the reason why this medium still exists is because there's a core behind it, because it has people making it, and you can see a little bit of that imperfection. So I wouldn't worry about just always striving for that perfection. I would still strive for good animation. I would look for a core of good performance, but this suspension of disbelief is when when you see something and you believe that it's real and you can get past that kind of the imperfections as long as it has a good story to tell and there's good characters in there. So focus on performance and acting and working on that animation and telling a good story most. But it's a great question.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Any other question? Okay. Right. Come. Ask the question. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
So, as somebody who's been in the field for a long time, I'm presuming from the movies that you hold, what exactly, like, can you just like give some examples of movies or shorts or any animation in general, stop motion, that for whatever reason you looked at this and you were like, yes, this is special. Like this has gone on done. Like what criteria, what specifically? Want to hear?
All right. Okay. Did you
I'm
hear that?
sorry. I only heard the first part. I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Just asking for your opinion. What movies or shows or animations specifically have you seen stop motion that for whatever reason, whether it be the way that they animate or new technique they use or something unconventional, where you like stuff that you're like, oh, this is special, like this is standout.
Right.
Yeah.
So stop motion specifically or just in general?
Stop
Stop
motion.
motion? Stop motion. Um, hmm. That's a good question. Let me think. I feel like I am always inspired by what everybody is kind of doing. I think stop motion is it's a small community, so it's not, we see we if we were talking about like fine art, there'd be such a massive amount to be inspired from, right? And so I find anything I watch, I feel like I can pull from. So it's something. So if I watch like an Aardman film, I love their humor and I love some of the textures in their work. And then um, like with Pinocchio, there's such a heart to that story. And same with I worked on Frankenweenie and this working with Tim Burton on that film, and it's like, oh man, there's like a deep, dark heart there, right? And and so all of these films, I don't have just one. I just really love seeing like, um, and I find there's always something to inspire you, right? And also, it's gonna one thing that it really amazes me, even about the past work, like stuff that's been done like Nightmare Before Christmas and stuff that was done a while ago, is it's the film base. So they didn't have all the grabbers and everything that we have today. So knowing that that was done by hand without having like help, like was is phenomenal, because knowing that that was kind of they didn't have dragons, so we couldn't just kind of like toggle through your work. You had to just trust that where you put your puppets, and you'd have these. Do you guys know about that? You have like basically pins noting where those were in 3D space, and those would mark it. So if you went out for lunch, you'd mark your puppets and you know where they were, and you'd be like, oh right, okay, I'm moving them this much forward each time. So for me, I find the process blows me away. So when you watch stuff, you can look up so much stuff on YouTube, like so many old stop motion films. And when you look at those and you think, oh my goodness, look what they were able to achieve with very little, that I feel like I get the most like inspired, because you're like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. And they just did it. And I still feel a lot from those films, right? And so go, I would say go and exploring those. I go look for like old films. Like the NFB, National Film Board of Canada, has a lot of stop motion films on there. They have a lot. All their resources are online. They're all free and accessible. All the past work. Um, but you can kind of go down a little bit of a rabbit hole and be inspired. But that's what I would kind of suggest. I have a hard time picking the one because I feel like I get inspired by many things. So.
Wow. Does it answer your question? Yes.
Thank you. It was a great
Any other
question. I
question?
appreciate it.
Question? Yeah, question. You don't? Okay. All right. So, Rachel, thank you. Thank you. You've had an amazing time. You have broken down some very crucial stuff in doing amazing stuff with stop motion, especially with the amateur. I really like the parts that talked about working with it inside out. I think that was really cool to hear. And then you said something about sometimes in when we asked about the work cycle, you said there's some parts that you still find it hard. So
Mhm.
that's good to hear, because we always think that you have it all figured out. you know. So when
No.
you hear that, it reduces the pressure. There's less pressure, because when the best guys still find it hard, then we're safe,
Oh
you
yeah.
know. That kind of thing. And so yeah, and then of course I was very happy to hear about weight distribution,
Hmm.
and all of that. I guess we'll be talking to Brian more about weight distribution. Thank you so
Hmm.
much, Rachel. Thank you for your
Yeah.
time. Thank you for waking up very early.
Oh, no
You know,
problem. It's all good. Yeah, can I add one thing? Can I add to what you said about it being hard? I am working with people who have done it for 20 to 30 years, and I'm still they'll still, one day they're fine and the next day they're like, I can't animate. And so that is normal, and stop motion does that. And so yeah, absolutely. Like I didn't animate for a month and I went back thinking, I don't know if I can animate. Where's everyone giving me a shot for? What is going on? And so, you kind of just try it, you get your hands on it and you go for it. And that process is really, really normal, even for people doing it every day. So it's so fascinating you guys are doing it. I'm really inspired by you doing this. I think that's wonderful. So thank you very much for having me. And it's great to meet all of you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Um, yeah. So Brian.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you. Have an amazing day.
You too. Bye, everybody.
So we would have a conversation in about 10 minutes with Brian. We're going to talk about weight distribution. We haven't talked about fitness yet. So these are things that, would equip you well for your amateur work, or animation. So I'm myself to ask a question. I think your turn. She said something that I found very important, that I think that we should pay attention to, and it was your question. What's your name? Dimeji or something. It was your question, and it was beautiful to ask that you did, because it's a question that we always concerned about, especially in recent times. The idea that stop motion, the beauty of it, as for the number of films that I've made, I realized that, the real beauty sometimes is in the imperfection. The fact that someone is funny, and all of that, that's, sometimes really comes out. And then, we're going through all of these processes, how to ensure that it's smoother. So it's a very funny, and then suddenly you see somebody do a stop motion, sort of stop motion, it's not stop motion. So using AI, now you say puppet. And then the thing is all track smooth. And you're like, that's not fair. And then so you're wondering where exactly, is the issue here. And then she says that, you should aim at creating life. A performance, being able to translate their emotions. So yes, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about that? The idea of creating life, from a character, over and above just trying to achieve smoothness, or imperfection, that variance between smooth and, in our practical day-to-day work, as you guys are animating these amateurs, you guys are thinking you want to give yourself life, isn't it? And you're also thinking, how can you make it look good? At the same time, you want it to look like stop motion. So yeah, plan.
I think that's one of the major issues I had when I started stop motion animation. I'm always in my head trying to make it look perfect. At least when it looks a little bit smoother, if the hand is waving, in the direction where a human being normally move. I feel okay, yes, I think I'm getting it. But it's more than that. It's more of trying to translate your story and making the animation look as unique as possible. I don't think we should take away from the uniqueness of how stop motion is. Sometimes, even in stop motion, there are different methods to it in terms of whether it look glitchy. There are some styles that look kind of glitchy. There's some that look kind of very smooth. So for each their own. Once you find your style, once you find how best to translate your story into the method you have become comfortable with, I think that's what most important. Rather than trying to make it look smooth, trying to make it look as perfect as possible. The beauty in it is how unique and make the movement.
Does that make sense to you? Yeah. Does anybody have anything to say to that? No. Okay. All right. So Brian, I see
Hello.
you.
I'm back.
Yeah. Yes, you're back. Yeah, I like seeing. Yeah.
You can finish whatever you were doing.
we
You can finish whatever you're
what?
doing, and I can just sit here and wait. I was just wanted not to be late.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you for coming up very early. On Saturday. I'm sure you have like other good stuff you could do. So yeah, we're really glad to have you. We are currently working on animation sequences right now in the hall here. Can someone turn the camera so that it is that yeah we have quite a number of students here who have been working on animation sequences. Yeah, because we're getting ready for the big stuff, and yeah, we're building the foundations for it, and so we obviously, in working with the amateurs, there are a couple of things that we are trying to understand better, especially, with using the joints, working with um, some of the interesting new features that's different from aluminum wire, that come with using amateurs. We're also working on the work cycle. Um,
Hmm.
and that. It's interesting that we have struggles, even though we already have ideas. We have ideas, so in our mind, the amateurs are already like running, but then to get to run, takes a process. So it's that process that we're really trying to get a hang of. But before we go too straight to the to talking with you,
Yeah.
would first of all, yeah, we would read your profile, so that all the students have an idea of stuff you have done,
Yeah.
and yeah, how much you have made a difference to the stories that we watch, the films that we watch, yeah. And then, yeah, we would ask you to tell us about, your journey as well. Okay, so yeah.
Please, guys, let's make Brian welcome and let's ignore that we have the students fly.
Awesome, awesome, guys. Sure, guys.
We appreciate your time. Thank you for being with us today.
Yes. Right.
Brian Hansen is an accomplished stop motion animator with extensive experience bringing characters to life in some of the world's most celebrated animated films. He was part of the animation team on Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which won the Academy Award for the Best Animated Feature. And he has also contributed to acclaimed productions, including Kubo, The Two Screens, Missing Links, and Paranorman. Known for his skills in character performance and physical storytelling, Brian works exemplifying the artistry and precision that defines world-class stop-motion animation. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the world's best stop-motion animators, please a loud ovation for Brian Hansen.
Ah, yeah. Yeah. Yes. Friend, thank you. We are elated, delighted to have you. We obviously we know that when we have the kind of guidance we're having today, it makes our work easier. It makes us to be able to achieve good stuff quickly, and not have to struggle. Stop motion people struggle for long to be able to get their sequences right. So but when we have guidance pretty early, it helps us go the right direction from the beginning and know exactly where to go. And so I would like you to share a bit about why exactly are you doing stop motion? We want to know why. Obviously you've done amazing stuff, but it definitely must have been some decision at some point to do stop motion animation. And so we want you to tell us why, and then how was the journey, towards, being able to do some of these projects?
Yeah. So I come from a quite tiny, tiny little village. I think there's about maybe like maybe 700 people living there. And my mom and dad were farmers, so having like cattle and pigs and stuff. So like, but very early on, I sort of thought, oh yeah, maybe I want to do something with film. It was hard to pin down, as your class can attest to, that it's hard to actually figure out what you want to do, but you have this idea about, oh, you want to do something with film. But because in my case, I didn't know anybody who was making films, or had anything to do with theater or anything like that. So it's quite hard to get in there and actually know what to do. It might be a little bit easier today because you got YouTube and the internet and stuff, which I didn't have. There was only the library. So it was hard for me to actually, first of all, find out what I wanted to do, and next also where to do this thing. So I actually didn't start with animation as a career. I became a chef instead, because that was like closer to something I knew. So I was actually a professional chef for like 4 or 5 years. I first to the real education, so I went to chefing school, and then I worked as a chef. But in doing that, I think I prepped myself a little bit for the what it takes to be a stop motion animator as well. Because there's a lot of precision and a lot of repetition, and you're kind of doing the same thing every day, but you have to keep the standard sort of high to meet whatever is asked for you. Um, and then I was doing that, which I'm pretty happy doing, but and I could have still doing that from that matters, because I thought it was very exciting. But then at some point I was like, oh no, I should try this film idea out, you know. So I went and found a place where they did 2D animation, and I got into sort of a pre sort of course for that, just to get better at drawing. But I was never very good at drawing. So and because I've had this professional career already, I kind of could see, well, I'm kind of not good enough. There's no way nobody's going to pay me to draw, because I can't draw well enough, and it's going to be too much of a struggle, which I also think is a good point. Um, you got to be doing something you're good at. Otherwise, it's just going to be, it's just going to be too difficult. Not that it says it's always difficult, but it's just going to be too difficult. So you've got to find something you're good at. And I could see, well, I'm not very good at drawing. I'm not good enough to be drawing for money. So I was like, well, okay, I'm going to try to find something else. And what really I wanted to do was I wanted to work with big puppets, like Muppets Show. I was like, when I was a kid, I watched Dark Crystal and stuff like that. And I really was into that more than the smaller puppet that I'm working with now. Um, so I was like, keep on searching. So I was like, oh, I'm going to finish this course because, I'm from the countryside. So finish what you started kind of mentality. So I finished that. And then I wanted to find something else. But then but then out of the blue, a stop motion course just popped up in front of me. So I was like, suddenly I could, oh, puppets over there. Maybe I want to do that. So I applied for that course, and then it turned out that I was really good at that, which is like really funny experience. So I just walked in, did like 3 months of 4 months of stop motion, and then had an internship, and then went back to school for another 4 months, and did more education with very, very talented educators. But I basically sort of learned stop motion in like half a year or something like that. A little bit more, maybe a year. And then I got my first job. So that's sort of my short version of my travel to my, animation career.
You know, it's interesting, when I think about being a chef, and then I'm thinking stop motion, I'll probably not two of them the same sentence, except I have like a story that has cooking in it, and all of that. So it's amazing, that you would discover stop motion through discover that you were good at stop motion, through a course, and then internship. So it's interesting that we could have potential, and not know that we have that potential, because when I think with the benefit of retrospect, or where you have to look back and see how much you've been able to do in stop motion, it would have been crazy to have missed it entirely, like completely, and just maybe have settled for being a chef,
Yeah.
and that would not like it was not good to be a chef, but then to have missed all of this, like for the whole world. Whoa, So yeah, it's interesting how some choices, some things that come across your path, can do that. And I'm so glad that this the stories. I find it very interesting and inspiring. And I figure that folks, who are not doing anything related to stop motion. But then there's an interesting thing about being a chef and stop motion is getting to use your hands.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, because
it's a production line, like animation is. So you're producing stuff of a high quality all the time, every day. So you meet in, you nearly kind of doing the same job every single day, but it's just a different. And that I think, sort of prepared me to just step into this role of, because you should think, as well as it's creative and inspiring and stuff, it's called production. It's called film production. So it's like being on a conveyor belt and working, making frames every day. And you should also remember to see it as that, because that's what it really is. It's enjoyable if you like it and stuff, but it is also like work, and you need to produce stuff constantly for you to be employed.
right. I like the way you say it's enjoyable, because a lot of people don't refer to stop motion that way. They say it's hard,
Yeah.
and but I was thinking about it this morning, and I realized that, for every stop motion sequence project I've worked on, I have actually enjoyed the process. So it must mean that, you know, um, for folks that truly enjoy the process, that stop motion is for them. It's not every other person may see it as difficult,
Yeah.
but then for folks that truly connect, they just enjoy every bit, of the process. And
Mm.
but I want to ask, some of the more technical parts of the animation process. So first, I want to talk about weight distribution. Weight distribution.
Yeah.
It's also one of the parts that we're all trying to figure out. Now, when we're animating with the amateur, we think first of the poses. Maybe we're taking references and then we're thinking of the poses. So how do we reflect? Because I discovered that the real spirit of the pose is in the weight distribution. So how do we get to how do we get to manage that? How do we get to feel it? Like when we lean to one side, when we stand, and we're like trying to have a grounded pose, and we lean to one side, recognize that our weight shifts to that side, and there's sort of like some reaction, on the legs and the shoulders and the hip and all of that. So how do we reflect weight distribution, on our puppets, on our amateurs? How should we think about weight distribution?
So that is one of the, I think, sort of most important things. When you're working with the puppet, it should feel like the puppet is standing on the table, and that you get by like uh, looking. Like, I think maybe the best thing is to look at yourself. Find out. And in the old days, um, I just was standing at the table, just like looking at myself and go like, where's my feet? Like looking straight, like looking down on me and going like, where's my feet? Oh, my feet is actually like straight under me, this leg over here, and then the other one is a little bit out to the side, and the foot is turned slightly. Oh, maybe I can mimic that into the puppet. So just kept on looking at myself. And I think what we're using nowadays more and more is like we're videoing ourselves, and then getting ideas, not rotoscoping, but getting ideas about. It's basically doing the same thing. You're just looking at yourself, finding out where your shoulders are, where your arms are, where your hips are compared to where your puppet is, and then practice. you know take your puppet and pose it, tie it down into the floor, because I do think that tie downs are another thing that's very important. Magnets are enticing and can be useful in some instances if you're doing something that's quick and stuff. But I do feel having tie downs in your puppet feet makes a world of a difference to make them look like they're actually planted on the table. And then start taking frames, not like animation, but just like um, moving your puppet in slightly, turning it slightly, changing the hands, changing the head, and then take a frame and then change the pose slightly until you got something that looks better than the thing you had on the screen before. So you go back, you flip back to your frames, and then you look at your pose and go like, oh, maybe actually there's a bit of overlapping. Also sometimes you look at silhouette more than you look at weight, actually. I think so. You look at your silhouette and you sort of assess if this is the best silhouette. And then you just keep on changing things, moving the hip around a little bit, and the more the puppet looks like it's got weight into the floor, even if you don't. I kind of quite often say that you need to know which leg the puppet is standing on, even if the legs are not in frame. You should always know if your puppet is standing on the right and the left, or the left foot, because that reflects the whole body right up to the like neck and torso and head. So yeah, so like, and just keep on moving around, keep on practicing, because I think like just practicing getting a heavy, not yeah, the best word is heavy, because you want gravity to stick to the pose, and that often also accounts for the what a clothes. If your puppet have clothes, make sure that that also has gravity. So if your puppet is having a shirt on or whatever, you don't want it to stick out in the wrong place. You don't want it to look like this. You want to pull it down and make sure that everything has gravity. So you keep on pulling and pulling and pulling until everything seems like it's like falling downwards. Um, and then yeah, it's just a practice. It's a practice, 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 and then keep on moving be brave enough to move your puppet out of the position is in, which you thought was pretty good, but then move it to somewhere else and then get it to fit again, and just keep on doing that until you got a selection of frames where it looks like the puppet is solid standing on the ground. And then once it comes to when you start animating, it's very important that your feet are solid, like sticking to the ground. As soon as you got a foot moving around on your surface like this, you lose tremendous amount of gravity. So it's important to have your foot like slammed in. As soon as the heel is down, then the weight is on the foot. It shouldn't really move before the weight is on the other foot, and then you can start moving and sliding and doing stuff.
Hey, awesome. Yeah. Wow, this is huge. How many of you guys, when you were animating, felt like the characters, the amateur, that the legs were floating? You know, that they weren't quite sitting on the floor. You know, because when the character is or puppet or whatever is walking, you know, that point where the legs hit the ground, it needs to sit. You know, if when you I don't know how many of you have watched the sequences that you film, you would notice that if the feet does not sit on the ground, you feel like it's sliding all over the place. You know, because you really need to keep it in that place. It's something called tie downs for the feet that sometimes you have to use to hold the feet down so that no matter what, it doesn't move around. And I think that's really powerful.
And they are
when you're
not
talking
particularly,
about
sorry, the tie downs are not particularly hard to do at all. You just need a knot, and then you need a thread. And the thread can be difficult to get, but you can just use a screw. You can just use a long screw, like a machine screw, and then a bolt. And then you tie them down. Or maybe I got some. I'm gonna draw it.
okay. Um,
Because like, you know, when you as soon as you hear tie down, you go, oh, that's something technical, and I probably can't achieve that. But maybe you can actually. There we go. So here we go. Here's just a normal bolt, and of course you need to find a small one to fit into your puppet feet, and then you just glue them in there with some epoxy or something, and then you take a long screw, and then you just cut the head off, zip, and then you got a tie down.
yeah. Yeah.
And
So
and then you can eventually, like, maybe you could glue two screws together or two bolts together, so you get one that's a little bit taller and therefore a little bit easier to grab. Or maybe you can be so lucky to have a wing knot or something that you could tie it down with. And then you just glue it into the feet. I've done Lego stuff where I just epoxied like bolts into the feet of the Lego characters, so I could tie them down. So just like glue and, like, you know, I don't know, some kind of epoxy based glue that's really strong, and then you just glue it in there, and then you have a tie down.
Okay. So we can use glue for the tie downs as well.
Yeah. If they will fall out, but then you just glue them back on and then carry on. You know, it's not even professional puppets. You know, they sometimes lose their tie downs because they're going to be stripped out. But then just glue new ones in.
Hey, so when the puppets are tied down, you know, with the screw and knot, or if you use glue, it holds it down. It doesn't look like your character is in the International Space Center,
where like everything is floating, because it's obviously, the moment it appears to float, you kind of like lose that realism in telling the stories. So we also wanted you to double down on animation principles because we obviously cannot have enough, of animation principles when we're working with puppets and characters. And so, when you animate, which of the animation principles do you use, more often? Walk cycles, for example. And I would like you to talk about the the animation principles in reference to your character type pool, the character type pool. Now, for example, I noticed that when you're dealing with older characters, like characters that are older, the anticipation is kind of a bit weaker. They are not necessarily as intense as maybe someone who is 3 years old, like that, because sometimes when I started out, I thought anticipation was like stay, you know, 3 frames or 2 frames back, then then you bring it back, and then like that, or maybe 5 frames back, so it goes really back and all of that. So I would like it because sometimes I notice that some of these rules that we use, it doesn't always like apply once there are variances with the characters. So I would like to speak to that.
Yeah, it's so starting from the last thing you said, like in anticipation, like for things moving back, it's very it's very rare I'm using that nowadays, actually. Because I've been animating the last, like, 20 years. I've been animating pretty realistic characters. So therefore, those sort of very cartoony principles haven't really applied to the work I'm doing. That's not saying I'm not using them, but I'm just not using them in a visible way. I'm not. I'm never going like, whoa, move. I might do a little bit of a something lean back, mostly about the weight and distribution of weight and stuff for me to like reach over there. Maybe I do need to lean forward a little bit. So I'm doing a anticipation for my movement, but it's not an anticipation that goes back and forth, like back and then forward. It's more an anticipation of I think the more important principle is showing what you're going to do it, and show what you've done. I think that is a better principle than the anticipation principle, because you want to show what you're doing, and showing what you're doing can be so small. That can be me leaning to grab something, or me looking up as if I wanted to leave, but I'm not going to leave yet. And so to tell the audience what you're going to do, and then do the thing you're going to do, and then also show the audience what you've done. So, and that sort of can be scaled up and down, um, um, to fit whatever kind of animation you're doing. So yeah,
Oh,
tell the audience what you're going to do it, and then show them what you've done. And that's on a scale. It can be tiny, tiny, tiny things, or it can be big things. If you are doing a clown character, you can imagine like a clown character is looking at the ball and go like, "Oh, I'm going to pick the ball up now," and then he picks the ball up, very visible, and then go like, "Oh, look, I picked the ball up." Or it could be you can imagine a gangster sitting completely still, and you can do the same things with a gangster doing nothing. So that scale is sort of sliding. So it's about what the character wants, what you want to show the character's thinking, and then and then leaning into whatever characters you're animating. That
Show them
was
what
some
you've
of your
done.
question. What was the other part of your question? I can't remember now. Yeah, well, yeah, just like play that out. Other principles. Oh, so what I want to say is learn how to walk a puppet. That is most important. I actually thought I got my first job because I was able to walk a puppet without it looking like it was limp, or had some kind of other disturbing sickness, just like walking a puppet straight like across the screen is so important to be able to do, because you're going to be asked to do it constantly. And as soon as an animation person has seen you can walk a puppet, they're basically ready to hire you. Don't worry about, I see so much dancing and stuff on YouTube. Don't, because it doesn't show, unless you're really good, it probably just shows your lack of skill more than it shows your skill. Walk a puppet, like have a puppet sit, stand up, walk away from the chair. That shows more about your ability to animate than a cool dance is doing. Because there are some cool dances around, but you have to have tremendous skill to prove it up, like to make it work. You can't just start with copying a dance from YouTube and then thinking that's going to be great, because you're probably not there yet. You need to practice on the more simple things and get the weight of the walk, right first, and then you can start. And then you can start on variations. And as you said, like then you can start. Oh, what if I make? But you have to do it conscious. You can't just go like, oh, maybe this looks like an old man now because he's limping a little bit. No, you have to set out with, now I'm just going to walk this guy or whatever across the screen, and I'm going to do it as precise and accurate, and every step is going to be the same as the last step. If you can do that, you basically got a job, I think so. And that's what you should be concentrating on, instead of doing YouTube dance, because it doesn't tell anything. Like walk a puppet, and there's plenty of places where you can walk, like where you can like see how to walk a puppet, but you're probably going to run into this, like these two positions. The contact and the passing are your most important positions. And you should make sure that when you do, animation is about telling stories on a very tiny scale. And if you're thinking about telling a story about walking, so the audience needs to understand what you're doing. So you have to portray your silhouette and your footwork very simple and very clear for the audience to understand now you're walking. So your contact position and your passing position should be like in your brain, as clear as real pictures in front of you. And you should try to mimic the same. I quite often go like, oh, there's a V there and there's a 4 there. And if you, in your silhouette, while you're looking at your puppet, and you remember to look at your puppet from all kinds of sides, from one side and the other side, so you make sure there's not leaning too much to either side, so it's straight up and down, and straight this way as well. And then you walk forward and you keep on looking at it, make sure that everything, and you should, every time you're in that passing position, you should recognize the passing position, and it should be pretty similar to the last passing position you had on the left foot or right foot. And if you do that right, and you have to keep on practice and take it back to zero again, walking across the table, finish the walk. It's a bit like is storytelling. So you can use a lot of the, you have to finish what you started. That's a bit like if you're writing a script, you have to finish the whole script before you start messing around with it. You can't just like write the beginning, because the beginning is easy. You have to write the end as well, because that's where you get in trouble. The same with walking. The first step, easy, because you didn't have anything to compare it to. Next step is going to be more difficult. The third step is going to be even more difficult. And the fourth step, just before you leave screen, is going to be the most difficult things you've ever done, because now you're living with all these other choices and mistakes you did all along. And once you get to the end, you go like, yeah, that was great. And then go back to front and then do it again a million times until you got it sorted out and you got it without it looking like it's limping. It's got the same. It doesn't necessarily need to have the exact same amount of frames for each step. It's quite nice if it varies, like one or two frame for each step, but it needs to look the same.
Okay. That's huge. To think about work cycles as something that's very crucial, not just in understanding the process of actually doing the work cycle, and then of course how important it is to what the future of students participants here could be. It's interesting because you did draw a point about us being able to pick our direction from this. Because, like, for example, stop motion, their path, as an animator, you can decide to make your own film, and so that would determine, what your approach is to the animation sequencing. So, Brian did say, something I found very interesting, that if you wanted to get a job, or you wanted to work on a project, say Lighter, or Shadow Machine, or Adman, that if you just did, and I can assure you it's not just, but then if you did an animation that had a character sit, stand, and walk away from the seat, that you would have an opportunity, So you could imagine that if you sat back, and you practiced, maybe you one of the guys that gets the amateur, you understand, and you make a sit, and I can assure you sit at the easiest thing, you can get popsicle sits and make a sit, and then you have your character, your amateur sit, already I'm sure you can all imagine your puppet, your amateur sitting down, and then he gets up and then he walks away from the seat. And that becomes your first sequence in your portfolio. You're on your way to getting a job in that studio, somewhere far away, US or UK. So you can see that some of these things and the real life practical stuff is not like just being told to you. So I just wanted to draw that out, because sometimes, some of these very obvious, maybe mildly obvious things, sometimes we miss it out completely, and so I wanted to ask, in terms of, when we animate, what now on your own perspective, what would you consider if you were to look at an animation sequence? What would you consider to be a successful one? That you saw a sequence and you say, yeah, this is good. What would you be looking out for in a sequence? And you say, yeah, this person got it right. With this sequence, because obviously I recognize the fact that there is no wrong and there is no right, like that. But then there's when you're out, like way out, of you didn't. It could you could figure out what the action is, but then the animation is not just something that you feel that you should be proud of. So what do you look out for? To consider successful animation sequence.
Yeah, so there's two It depends a lot. It depends a lot on what you're working on. Um, but I think if I'm looking at people's work for jobs, I'm looking at the weight and the understanding of gravity. And then I'm also looking at the understanding of using the frames as a tool. Like if you understand what it would like, how you can use the frames as a sculpting tool, because there's like the spacing and timing are just as important as the weight. So if you got somebody who can display, they understand that, oh, the frames are actually just a tool as well that I could use to my advantage. But yeah, it's mostly weight. I always look at weight. And if the puppet looks like it's standing on the ground, then that's I think is half done. And then, if I'm looking at a shot for a film, I'm mostly probably just looking at the cut, where it cuts in and where it cuts out, and if the puppet is in the right spot at those 2 points, you're halfway there. And then, depending on what kind of level you're working on, then you ask more of the animator to get more precise with the emotion and stuff. But most times it's really the cut points. Like, is the puppet looking at the other character at the cut point? Because we like to do that. If the character is looking the other way, then we can't cut, and therefore we can't use the shot. So it's more about the cut in point and the cut out point when I'm looking at a shot and for an approval, And then what happens in the middle is kind of, as long as it is not completely crazy, it normally works, So yeah, in and out, that's where I'm looking at when I'm looking at stuff. And when I'm looking at stuff like reels and stuff, it's the weight and the gravity I'm looking mostly for, and the understanding of the animation principles, and mostly that is spacing. Did that make sense?
Well, yes, it does. It makes
Yeah.
a whole lot of sense. Any questions now? For Brian, talking about the weight and the distribution at this point. It's always something that's crucial in our approach to whatever animation sequence that we're doing. So you have questions, great. Okay, so yeah. So there are questions. Please, can you turn
Okay.
the
Yeah.
camera?
Hello. I
Hello.
want to ask, how would you implement something like squash and stretch or smear frames in stop motion animation?
Oh, come again. Question again. Sorry.
How would you use smear frames or squash and stretch in stop motion animation?
Oh, so squash and stretch, and the other thing you said?
Smear frames.
Oh, yeah. See, that's because you're working with a puppet that's physically and not squashable. You need to achieve your squash and stretch in a different way than actually compressing shapes. So I would quite often you can kind of like, if that's another thing that's good to remember, is that you're working in a 2D image, but you're working in a three-dimensional world. So for you, this is just like flat. Like, but for me, it's like a full piece of paper. So in your squash and stretch, you can just like, if you just bend the puppet down, you kind of created a squash and stretch because you change the shape of your puppet, and then you can pop it back up again. So just like if you just bend the puppet down, instead of doing the 2D things where you just like squash the whole ball, but if you just bend the puppet down in a way, and you could even do that without you like literally doing it like this, You don't have to do that. You can just make it slightly smaller and then pop up. So you got your squash and your stretch. So yeah, even though you're working with something that doesn't transform, you can make the eye believe that it might have transformed. Do you understand? So you remember that the 2D, this is just a 2D image. So you could do a lot of things in your 3D world that is only viewed from the viewer as 2D. So you do magic trick. And you could even, if you really want to go squash and stretch, you could just change your object. So I could just change my object, into a smaller object. Then that's my squash, and then I can make it bigger again. So that's my stretch. And then I can make it even bigger again, even without making it bigger. I can make it this big. And that's my super stretch. And then I can move it back again and be like this small. So it's like remembering that you're working on a 2D world, but you got a 3D, universe. There's my squash and stretch on this piece of paper. You see? And you wouldn't know, you wouldn't see like a frame or two of this, you wouldn't realize that I just moved the puppet closer to the camera and back again. So it's magic tricks. So you got to think about magic. And then the smear frames are a little bit more difficult because then that is probably easiest if you're working in clay or plasticine or whatever. Then you can always do some smear, but it sort of needs a little bit more preparation. So you could do your head of your character of your head. You could, even if you had a hard head, you could make a plasticine version of that head and then squash that and then pop it back to your hard puppet head. So you can make, again, you make magic. You have your puppet. That's your puppet you have been animating. Then let's say it gets squashed in a door. Then you just built a plasticine head that you then squash in the door, and then you pop back out and put your real head back on again. Then you're done a squash. Or you could smear it. You could do like a Looney Tune kind of smear, kind of looking sideways. Then you could use your hard head. You could use your hard head, which I've seen all the time, and also in like big Leica films or whatever. So let's say you got your head. I'm doing a drawing again. So here's your character. There your character. And then for the smear, you just stick another 2 eyes. It requires you have another 2 eyes, but you just stick 2 eyes on the side of the head in like 1 or 2 frames, and then you got your smear. So you just need to think out of the box, think about magic, because that's what you're doing. You're doing magic. So you just think about how to do magic, and then you could do that with anything. Once you got your eyes, you can easily imagine you could do arms and legs. Quite often, if you don't have eyes, you just you take a photo. You take a photo of your puppet, and then you print the photo of your puppet out, and then you cut your eyes out. So this is a photocopy of my puppet now. So now I got these like photocopied eyes that I then just stick onto my puppet, and nobody's going to see. Nobody knows. You got a photocopy of your puppet eyes, and you could do that with arms and legs as well. Quite often people are taking photos of the arm and then print it out, cut the arm out, and then stick an extra arm, just a paper arm on top. And that works as a smear frame as well. And nobody's going to know. And it's best if nobody knows, because then when you have become most successful, if people have to like step through your smear frame and go like, wow, he put like 4 eyes on this puppet, and I didn't even know the first 5 times I watched it. Yeah.
You know. All right.
Do you
Yeah,
do you
thank you.
understand this? Do you get it?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Second question. Who was asking the second question? You. Yeah. We go asking. Okay. Nobody is asking another question. Okay. All right. Brian. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. It's a lot of stuff. I have also been writing, like, because there's some stuff that have been like, I know that when I get back to the studio, I'm gonna check them out, because I haven't done that too, and the more of the stuff that we understand, the more stuff we can actually do, sequences, especially some creative tricks, techniques, those are absolutely valuable to
Yeah,
our process.
I
So
do think that using the printer and copy machine for making more puppets. I recently just did an animation where I just printed out my puppets bigger to get the squash and stretch, and I just printed out like 3 versions of the puppet bigger, changed them out with the paper version, and nobody knows because it's only like there for like 2 frames.
that's so strange,
Yeah.
and then, oh wow. It's interesting, and nobody will know. That's true, because it's very brave. Yeah, thank you. We appreciate the effort you have also made in explaining, because it makes it clearer for us. So thank you so much, Brian. We wouldn't
Very
want to
good.
take time beyond. Yes. No more questions? None? So yeah, thank you. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Well, thank
You
you.
have an
Great to meet you
amazing
all,
evening. Yes.
and
Thank you for
good luck.
spending your morning. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for spending your morning with us as well.
Yeah.
We do look forward to connecting again, at some point. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. See ya. Bye.
Right. Okay. Okay, so guys, yeah, so we have one last session. Yeah, no, but you see, this is the issue here. Honestly, I would have like say, okay, we're done for today, but this is the producer of Pinocchio. Yes,
The biggest of them all.
like so I
Ejala.
don't know. I'm going to try to make it as short as I can, so that. But then there's just some things that you need to hear from direct, kind of thing, and for us to be able to connect with her has been an absolute privilege, for all the people that has spoken to us throughout this workshop here, the workshop the Avatech, it's been an amazing experience. She did tell me, yes, she's here, Melanie. Please, I say happy Thanksgiving. Oh, wow. Okay, Melanie, it's so good to see you again.
You too, darling.
Yes, yes. We're so glad. It's already been quite a long day of animation stop motion here at the Pan Atlantic University. Yes, you were with us last week at the Eva College of Technology, and yeah, we had an amazing time. And so, yes, we want to start as early as possible so we can, and then you did